Employees have been entering and working in confined spaces for many years. Most of them return safely, but many do not. Whether you're employed in a factory, chemical plant, public agency, or service organization of a construction firm, the confined space hazard you face are quite similar. Failure to closely follow specific rules, regulations, and confined space safety standards can just about guarantee serious injury or even death. There isn't any room in confined space entry for risk-taking. Every job must be approached with a professional attitude and a methodical system designed to prevent situations from escalating into disaster. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, or NIOSH, found in more than 50% of confined space accidents, the rescuer becomes the victim. This same scenario is repeated time and time again. A worker is overcome by an atmospheric contaminant, and the rescuer, being a concerned person, goes into the space to rescue the overcome worker, only to become a partner in death. There have been cases where as many as 5 potential rescuers have fallen victim during a failed rescue attempt. NIOSH also found that very few organizations provided any type of written procedures or training specific to confined space entry. Rarely had the confined space been tested for atmospheric hazards prior to entry, or had any provision been made for ventilation or safe rescue. These major factors have historically led to annual death toll of more than 300 workers. Workers just like you, with families like your own. When required to enter a manhole, vault, or other confined space, there's much more involved than just lowering down the tester and going to work. It's serious business, and you must be very familiar with the hazards you could encounter. This video program is designed to provide you with safety basics involved in confined space entry. Of course, we can't cover all the hazards or safety procedures, but we will go over the most essential safety methods. No matter how you look at it, confined space entry is a complicated matter, requiring specific procedures, so you must always follow your company's policies and procedures. Let's start with the definition of a confined space. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration Standard 1910.146D defines a confined space as any area which is large enough and so configured that an employee can bodily enter and perform work and has limited or restricted means for entry or exit. Is not designed for continuous human occupancy. By this definition, is this sewer manhole a confined space? How about this water utility vault? This tank? Storm drain? Wet and dry well? Silo? Pipeline? Pressure vessel? Hopper? Pit? Or vat? If you answered yes to all these questions, you're correct. How about this trench? Depending on the circumstance, even trenches can become a potential confined space. The very first and most basic safety rule is never, ever trust your senses. That's right. In confined space, workers will swear that they can tell when the air turns sour. Well, they're wrong. Dead wrong. There are many hazards that just can't be detected by the human nose until it's too late. Other hazards can actually play tricks on your sense of smell, lulling you into a false sense of security. Let's take a moment to review the most common confined space atmospheric hazards. Oxygen deficiency. Depending on where you live, the air you breathe generally contains about 21% oxygen. In order to safely enter a confined space, OSHA requires that the space have a minimum of 19.5% oxygen. Levels of 14% can cause difficulty in breathing or drowsiness. 12% can create an inability to think clearly. At 10%, unconsciousness can occur, and at 8%, well, you're probably history. Not only is oxygen deficiency a concern, but in certain cases, an excess of oxygen can occur, creating a fire hazard. Generally, an oxygen-enriched environment contains at least 23.5% oxygen. In this case, a spark or other source of ignition can cause a flash fire and/or explosion. Flammable or explosive gases. Many confined spaces may contain flammable and/or explosive gases or vapors. Often these hazards occur naturally from decaying paint or animal material, natural gas, chemical and petroleum byproducts, illegally dumped hazardous materials, or seeping fuel. It's important to remember a couple of important points regarding flammable and/or combustible environments. Some flammable and/or combustible vapors are lighter than air and collect at the top of the space. Others, which may be heavier than air, settle at the bottom. Common flammable gases found in confined spaces may be carbon monoxide, natural gas, hydrogen sulfide, and methane, to name a few. Remember, methane, in addition to being lighter than air, may also push out oxygen from the space, causing suffocation. Methane, also known as sewer gas, is odorless, colorless, and explosive. Toxic gases and vapors. As if oxygen deficiency and explosive gas aren't enough to worry about, in some cases toxic vapors and gases can cause injury or death, even in low concentrations. Toxic atmospheres are generally divided into two major classes: irritants and asphyxiants. Irritants are gases that in low concentration may only cause an irritation to your respiratory system, such as a sore throat or coughing. High concentrations can cause serious concerns or even death. Hydrogen sulfide, H2S, a common gas found in confined spaces, is an extremely toxic substance. As little as 100 parts per million, or 0.01%, can cause death. Exposure to certain concentrations can cause your lungs to fill with liquid, drowning you in your own body fluids. High concentrations can cause you to quickly pass out and fall. If you're not found and treated quickly, you may die. Hydrogen sulfide is an insidious gas which smells like rotten eggs. It also deadens your sense of smell so that you can no longer detect the odor. H2S is flammable and explosive as well. Asphyxiants can cause death by displacing or pushing out air you need to breathe. The most common asphyxiants are carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and sulfur dioxide. Be aware that any one or combination of these hazards can coexist in a confined space. Now, if your sense of smell can't be relied upon, just how do you safely test the space? Years ago, confined spaces were often tested with such items as candles, small birds, and mammals. Technology provided some early testing devices such as this flame safety lamp, alarm-only instruments, and other types of sniffers. Today, modern instrumentation takes advantage of sophisticated sensors, LED readouts, pumps, and many other improvements. The key to using confined space instrumentation is to assure that the user is very competent in the calibration, use, and interpretation of the results. Just handing an instrument to any employee to use is dangerous and should never be considered. The new OSHA standard requires that in addition to a well-trained user, the instrument must be calibrated to the manufacturer's instructions. How else can you be sure that the unit is working properly? An important aspect of the new OSHA standard is the definition of a permit and non-permit required space. The term non-permit required confined space is defined in 1910.146b as a confined space that does not contain, or with respect to atmospheric hazards, have the potential to cause any hazard capable of causing death or serious physical harm. Some examples of non-permit spaces might include ventilated vaults, open vaults, motor control cabinets, etc. The key is that these examples have sufficient natural or mechanical ventilation to prevent the accumulation of hazardous atmospheres. In addition, they also do not present an engulfment risk or other hazard. Permit required spaces, on the other hand, defines a confined space that has the potential for one or more of the following hazards: atmospheric hazard, such as oxygen deficiency, toxic or combustible environments; engulfment hazard. An engulfment hazard is the potential for an employee to be trapped by liquids and/or flowable solids, such as powder or grain. Configuration hazard. A configuration hazard is represented by the shape of a space, such as a hopper, with inwardly sloping sides, and any other recognized hazard. Specific training must be provided to be sure that employees are well versed in the difference between permit and non-permit required spaces. Essentially, the permit system is part of a written program and procedure requiring supervision to prepare and issue permits for entry and work within a confined space. The purpose of the permit is to gain the supervisor's permission to enter and walk the entry team through specific step-by-step procedures to assure everyone's safety. Upon occasion, an additional permit may be required for operations which would require hot work, such as welding or cutting. Safe entry and work in confined spaces require employees to be trained in the risks, hazards, and procedures for working safely. No work should take place in a confined space, permit or non-permit, without careful pre-planning beforehand. Let's review some of the essentials we've covered so far. First, permission must be obtained to perform the work in permit-required spaces, assuring that the necessary permit was completed prior to entry. Next, employees must be trained and have a clear understanding of the hazards that may be encountered during the project. In addition, the worker must have the ability to review the atmospheric results. Also, each employee must understand his or her responsibilities for the project, including the use of trained workers, observers, and emergency standby personnel. Other procedures to take into account include the condition of on-site safety equipment. All necessary safety equipment must be on-site and in good working order. Instrumentation of a direct reading alarm type must be calibrated according to the manufacturer's recommendations and checked before use. The space should be continuously monitored during the course of the project as well. Testing and evaluation of the atmosphere should be completed by a trained, competent employee. Lines that carry flammable or otherwise injurious substances must be blocked or locked out to avoid accidental contamination or injury while in the space. Ventilation equipment must be working properly and of sufficient capacity to adequately ventilate the space. Assurance that the space has been cleaned or purged of hazardous substances prior to entry. However, be aware that purging with certain inert gases can in itself create a hazardous condition. The permits used during entry projects must be kept on file for at least 1 year after the date issued. This information could also provide valuable history on certain confined spaces that are frequently entered at your organization. If chemical products such as paints or coating may be used in the space, it's an excellent idea to refer to the Material Safety Data Sheets, or MSDS, to identify any potential hazards based upon the job being performed. The most important jobs associated with confined space entry are that of confined space supervisor, observer, and emergency standby, though your organization may decide to choose a different title. The confined space entry supervisor or observer is the person directly in charge of the operation. They're responsible for assuring that the job is progressing safely. They'll see to it that the atmosphere in the space is safe to enter, that ventilation is sufficient for the space, and that all necessary safety and emergency equipment is available for use. The observer's sole job is to supervise the safety activities of the task, monitor the atmosphere, and assure that only trained employees are assigned to the job. In addition, they must remain in direct communication with the workers at all times. This generally will be in the form of voice or radio contact. Though if using a radio, be sure that it is certified for potential explosive or flammable atmospheres. An additional trained emergency standby must also be nearby to assist in the event of a potential rescue. Let's now talk about proper techniques involved with confined space entry. First, acquire permission. Complete the necessary permits or forms and arrange for all the necessary equipment to be on-site. By the way, it's a good idea to provide dispatch with exact map coordinates in the event of an emergency. This will provide quicker emergency response when it's needed. Next, determine if there are any unplanned concerns or hazards on site, such as traffic control, contractors, chemicals, blockout operations, and so on. Then determine whether all employees are currently trained for the task and have permission to be there. This includes emergency standby crews as well. The next step is to sample the atmosphere by testing the opening. You can do this by first testing around the edges or in a pick hole. Then, open the lid slightly and test in the upper aspect of the space. Drop about 1/4 of the way down, halfway, 3/4 of the way, and on to the bottom, carefully testing and documenting the results as you go. Make sure you provide adequate ventilation to make the space safe or augment existing ventilation. See to it that the ladder rungs are safe. Certain chemicals can react with metals, corroding the ladder and making a fall a distinct possibility. If needed, clean or purge the space of any unsafe products or materials. Look around the area for evidence of illegal dumping or hazardous materials, such as an oily residue just outside the opening. Review the results of testing with all those on the project and be sure they understand any potential hazards that might be encountered before they enter the space. Be sure that employees are provided with the necessary safety equipment for use in the space, in addition to emergency rescue equipment. Remember to continuously monitor the atmosphere and remain in direct communication with the workers at all times. Confined space emergencies are no place for single-handed heroics. More than 50% of confined space deaths involve potential rescuers. Should an emergency arise, the observer will immediately summon the emergency standby to call for assistance before any attempt to enter and make a rescue. Always have all emergency numbers handy for use. If your organization uses employees to make a confined space rescue, each employee must be provided with and trained in rescue procedures, personal protective equipment, and equipment required to make a rescue. OSHA does provide for the use of outside emergency rescue services, but be sure that careful coordination is considered before taking this step. Members of the rescue team must undergo training at least once every 12 months, including hands-on simulated rescue techniques. This would generally require the use of mannequins, dummies, or people to effectuate the training in actual permit-simulated spaces. Each member must be trained and comfortable with the use of self-contained breathing apparatus, as well as escape packs and ventilation equipment. Work team and emergency crew members must be trained and hold a current first aid and CPR certificate. And no matter what, no rescue may ever be attempted without the use of the proper respiratory protection, such as an SCBA, escape pack, ventilation, and mechanical hoist with full body harness. The full body harness should include the retrieval line attachment on the back, between the shoulders. Wristlets may also be used in lieu of a harness. Remember, confined space work can be extremely hazardous. And although we can't provide all the necessary training required for safe work in confined spaces, we hope this program has made you more aware of all the hazards involved. If you think about it, with over 300 deaths annually, the rules and regulations as adopted by OSHA make good sense. Testing for safe environment makes sense. The use of emergency egress equipment also makes sense. Training, personal protective equipment, permits, written procedures, and other related requirements all lead to a safer workplace for you. Thank you.
Nature has tried to protect the eyes from injury by providing us with a number of built-in devices. The eyelashes catch dust and light particles before they can blow into the eye. Eyebrows cushion light blows and catch falling particles before they reach the eye. Tear ducts lubricate the eyes and wash away foreign substances that can get on the eyeballs. Pupils contract to protect the eyes from bright sunlight. Blinking your eyes is a defense mechanism to protect your eyes also. These natural defenses protect the eyes from minor injuries, but they are not sufficient to protect our eyes from heavy exposures that exist in industry today. You know the hazards. You work with them every day. Chips and grinding particles, splashes of hot metal or other substances which can burn and scar the eyeball. Chemicals such as acids, tar, gasoline, diesel fuel, pesticides, and a wide range of other chemicals that can damage your eyes and face. You know what we're leading to, and here it comes. That fantastic and exciting array of personal protective equipment known as eye protection. You got it. We could wrap this program up in about 30 seconds by telling you to wear eye protection when required. But of course you already know that. So let's take the short way around a big subject and talk a bit about eye protection and try to give you information so you can make the right decision when and where and how to wear eye protection. Certainly, we don't need to show you pictures of people having their eyes cut open in surgery to show you the danger of eye hazards. We don't need to show you some safety glasses with embedded nails, chips, or other testimony about how safety glasses saved a person's eyes. This program is just a little different. As informed professionals in an industry where every day poses a new problem or situation, let's take a few minutes to review some straight facts. Then you make up your mind about eye protection yourself. First, let's hit the people who wear glasses and don't wear eye protection. Now, when you get a new pair of glasses from the optometrist, he or she will tell you they are safety glasses, specially treated. Now, in most states, it's the law. What the optometrist is telling you is the glasses are specially treated to help prevent them from breaking if you drop them. They are not safety glasses in the industrial sense, unless you specifically ordered a pair of industrial safety glasses with your prescription. Normal street glasses are not eye protection. Industrial safety glasses are special glasses that can withstand a certain impact without shattering. There's a standard all opticians use when creating industrial safety glasses. Okay, your street glasses are not eye protection. In fact, you can add to the hazard in some cases. If you wear glasses, you should wear industrial safety glass prescription lenses. Check with your company or optometrist for specific information. Now, without getting complicated, let's review quickly some basic eye protection facts. Safety glasses are designed to protect you from light impacts. Could be a nail flying off a hammer, a broken piece of chisel, milling chips, or a variety of other light impact objects. Notice we didn't say complete eye protection. Even safety glasses can be damaged, but they do provide some degree of eye protection. One problem that exists with safety glasses is the part that remains exposed. Side shields do offer some protection, but what about the top and bottom of the glasses? Many injuries occur while employees are wearing safety glasses, but something got underneath the glasses and caused an injury. That's why the proper selection of safety eyewear is so important. Now, to solve that problem, select the fully enclosed safety goggles. The main drawback here is they get hot, sweaty, and sometimes they even fog up. They do have vents in the goggles, but again, it's a decision and judgment a professional must make. Eye protection or comfort? We had planned to have several disabled persons who lost their eyesight in industrial accidents tell you the chance isn't worth it, but we decided against that. It was just a little too dramatic. Now, welders have special protection because of the harmful effects of ultraviolet, visible, and infrared light. Depending upon the flux used and the size and temperature of the melted metal, the welding process will emit all three harmful light spectrums. Basically, the control of infrared and visible radiations are most desired. Heavy gas welding and cutting operations exceeding 30 amps present special problems in the ultraviolet light spectrum. There are special shades of protection for specific applications. If you choose a shaded lens, it may seem okay to you, but if it's not the right shade for the job, you could be damaging your eyes without even knowing about it. That's where you and the company must make the decision to use the right lens for the specific job. There are other specialty eye protection devices available, such as laser eye protection and others, but the important consideration is to use the equipment and not take chances. That brings us to the next consideration, and that's the face shield. It's the one sitting over the grinder that has a lot of dust on it. We know the reason why you don't use it, but a full face shield does offer protection for your face and eyes. It is recommended you wear safety glasses under the face shield for proper protection. Grinders, chemicals, and a variety of other areas require full face shields. Remember, safety devices are designed and required because of past experience. Now, years ago, when someone lost an eye, it was suggested safety glasses be invented. Safety is nothing but experience and trying to prevent repeat injuries. Okay, how about some more information on what to do when and if you ever have an eye injury at home, work, or at play? First, a short disclaimer. Always seek the advice of your doctor and follow your company's policies and procedures relating to first aid or treatment of any work injury. These are basic guidelines only, but only a physician can provide specific treatment advice. Getting something in the eye is the most common eye problem. Do not try to remove a particle from your eye unless you are sure it is just a minor irritant like dust or dirt. If there is doubt, seek medical attention. Do not rub your eyes or use dirty fingers to remove foreign objects. Small particles can often be dislodged by pulling the upper eyelid out and down over the lower lid. If you can see a particle floating on your eye, try to remove it with the corner of a clean handkerchief. Or spread your eye open with your thumbs and forefinger and pour tap water into the eye. If something is embedded in your eye, try to remain still. Do not attempt to remove that object. Do not rub, press on, or wash the eye even to stop bleeding. Loosely cover the eye and go to the nearest emergency medical room immediately or call an ambulance. If you know what is embedded in the eye, such as a metal chip, be sure to tell the doctor, as this will help in the treatment procedures. Certainly, you may be exposed to chemical burns. Immediately flood the exposed eye with water. Be quick to flush the eye with water, as every second counts. If you have an acid exposure, flush the eyes with water for 15 minutes. If exposed to alkalis, 30 minutes is necessary. When in doubt, flush the eyes with water longer periods of time. Don't waste time looking for antidotes. Spread eyelids open with the thumb and forefinger, or pull the lower lid down to help get more water into the exposed area. Chemical burns are serious, and if you don't get water within seconds, you may be permanently damaged. Always seek medical attention as soon as possible after flushing your eyes with water. Again, knowing what chemical caused the exposure will help with the treatment. Just think, all this trouble can be avoided by wearing the proper eye protection. All right, a few more tips and we're out of here. You should have an eye exam periodically. And if you're over 40 and under 12, it should be annually or at least every 2 years. Most exams include a test for glaucoma, which is a serious disease that has no symptoms. If not found in time, it can destroy your eyesight. An eye exam can discover many other problems, such as cataracts, nearsightedness, farsightedness, astigmatism, and others. And how about contact lenses? Well, of course, they're great and make you look a lot better than people who have to wear glasses. But there's only one problem. Don't wear them in an industrial environment, especially where eyes are exposed to chemicals, fumes, mists, or such everyday eye hazards as welding, using impact tools, grinders, or other impact-producing tools and equipment. Leave your contact lenses at home. While we could give you many reasons for protecting your eyesight, let's just say it's important. Wear eye protection when it's needed. You don't need someone to tell you to wear it on a certain job. Professionals know what's happening, so make the right decision and wear eye.
Inspections also are required after rainstorms or any change in conditions that can increase the possibility of a cave-in or slide. If dangerous ground movements are apparent, all work in the excavation must be stopped until the problem has been corrected. In case of an emergency, workers must be able to leave the trench quickly. When employees are required to be in trenches 5 feet deep or more, adequate means of exit, such as a ladder or step, shall be provided and located so as to require no more than 25 feet lateral travel. Ladders must be in good condition, extend from the floor of the trench to 3 feet above the top of the excavation, and be secured at the top. As soon as the work is completed, the trench should be backfilled as the shoring is dismantled. After the trench has been cleared, workers should remove the shoring from the bottom up taking care to release jacks or braces slowly. In unstable soil, rope should be used to pull out the jacks or braces from above. A greater awareness of the safety problems to be overcome in excavations, particularly by the individuals who design and install the shoring, will help end cave-in hazards in the construction business. There can be no shortcuts or risk-taking. It's the responsibility of every individual on the job site associated with excavations and trenching operations. To prevent exposure to harmful levels of atmospheric contaminants and to make sure the air you breathe is not harmful, there are a couple of testing and control requirements. When there is an oxygen deficiency, which means atmosphere contains less than 19.5% oxygen, or a hazardous atmosphere exists, or could reasonably be expected to exist, such as in excavations, in landfill areas, or excavations in areas where hazardous substances are stored nearby, the atmospheres in the excavation shall be tested before employees enter excavations greater than 4 feet in depth. Adequate precautions shall be taken to prevent employee exposure to atmospheres containing less than 19.5% oxygen and other hazardous atmospheres. These precautions include providing proper respiratory protection or ventilation as required in OSHA regulations. Adequate precautions shall be taken, such as providing ventilation to prevent employee exposure to an atmosphere containing a concentration of flammable gas in excess of 20% of the lower flammable limit of the gas. When controls are used that are intended to reduce the level of atmospheric contaminants to acceptable levels, testing shall be conducted as often as necessary to ensure that the atmosphere remains safe. There are a number of things to remember in trenching and excavations, but let's just name a couple of important items we haven't fully explained in the program. The angle of the repose should be determined on each project by a competent person. That's the individual capable of identifying existing and predictable hazards in the surroundings, or working conditions which are unsanitary, hazardous, or dangerous to employees, and who has authorization to take corrective measures to eliminate them. Daily inspections of excavations, the adjacent areas, and protective systems shall be made by a competent person for evidence of a hazardous situation. An inspection must be conducted prior to the start of work and is needed throughout the shift. Inspection shall also be made after every rainstorm or other hazard-increasing occurrence. It goes without saying, but we'll say it again. All trenches or excavation should be sloped or shored or otherwise protected. No exceptions. Last, but certainly not least, if you think the trench or excavation is unsafe, do not enter it. Safety is important, and in trenching and excavations, safety is absolutely critical. Don't take chances. Follow the rules, and always take time for safety, because you're worth it. There are literally hundreds of types of cranes, rigging, and equipment in the construction industry, but there are some basic common safety rules that apply to all types of equipment. That's what this program is all about. Basic safety guidelines that apply to cranes and equipment, so you'll be more aware of safety and reduce the potential of an unplanned event, such as a property damage or injury. One of the more important rules is to never operate any type of equipment until you've been trained and authorized by your employer. Make sure you understand all the operating principles, rules, and information on the equipment you're using, and never use any crane that is defective or in unserviceable condition. Whenever there's any doubt about safety of the crane you're operating, stop the operation and notify your supervisor so the crane can be inspected and made safe by proper authorities. Naturally, before starting operations, inspect, test, and maintain the crane in accordance with the crane manufacturer's recommendations. Replace all parts and components showing excessive wear, damage, or other defects that could affect the safe operation of the equipment. Check all wire ropes and rigging components. Keep the machine clean and in good working order. Oil, grease, or mud on floor surfaces can cause serious falls, and dirt in working parts will cause excessive wear and possible failure. To protect yourself during the inspection process or during repairs or maintenance, lower the load to the ground. Check all protective guards and make sure all panels are in place before operating. It's important to check fuel, oil, radiator, and battery water levels. Hydraulics play a major role in crane safety, so double-check all hoses and connections for leaks, bulging, or other damage. Visually inspect all gear cases for leaks or damage. Make sure the gear case has the proper level before operating the equipment. Repair any damaged or unserviceable components. Inspect all controls to make sure they are properly working and work with ease. If a control is difficult to operate, check it out. Check the pressure in the tires and check to make sure the nuts are properly torqued on all wheels. Maintain proper inflation at all times, especially when you're working with outriggers. Inspect all the instruments on the instrument panel to make sure they're working properly. Check brake air pressure and the low air pressure warning devices. Inspect the foot brake condition, headlight, clearance lights, turn signals, parking lights, tail and stop lights. Make sure the windshield wipers and horn are working properly. Clean all windows and mirrors to increase visibility. These are the basics, but if you fail to inspect each component, you're taking a big risk. Inspect the entire machine for loose nuts, bolts, or damaged or worn parts. Be particularly watchful for cracked welds, frayed or damaged ropes, dented or damaged boom cords or other areas. The clutch and brake linings should be inspected for evidence of wear or grease and oil in the linings. Brakes and brake components are of particular importance, as serious injury to anyone working around the crane is possible if brake parts and adjustments are out of line or not properly maintained. When mounting the equipment, use proper ladders and other procedures. Don't grab wire ropes or lines because a sudden movement of the vehicle could pull your hands into the sheaves. During the operation of the equipment, the operator should watch for malfunctioning of the machine. Listen for unusual noises, loss of power, or bad response to control of the engine. Watch the gauges for abnormal conditions. If you experience a malfunction, shut the equipment down until it's checked and verified safe to operate. When you make your first load, test the winch brakes to make sure they will safely control the load. In extremely poor weather conditions, it may be unsafe to operate the crane. High wind conditions can cause the load to swing out of control or out of the intended swing area. If you can't see because of the weather conditions, it's unsafe to operate the equipment. In extremely cold conditions, the metal parts can be quite brittle, so never subject your crane to shock loads or jerky movements. During refueling operations, make sure all spark-producing devices are turned off. This includes the motor, any heaters, radios, or other such equipment. Bonding and grounding is necessary in most refueling operations, particularly when using flammable liquids. Before starting operations, make sure that all personnel are well clear of the crane. Before backing up, make sure no one is behind the crane. Use another person to help guide you when the visibility is blocked. When getting on or off the equipment, use ladders or proper handholds. Never jump off the equipment. Of course, never allow anyone to ride on the equipment. When you first start your engine, allow the engine to warm up for a few minutes to give the oil a chance to circulate. Don't operate the machine under load until the hydraulic oil has warmed to the minimum operating temperature specified by the manufacturer. To circulate the oil, operate the winches, boom hoist cylinders, boom extension cylinders, and swing mechanism to circulate the oil. Basically, operate all controls so the oil will have time to warm up and lubricate all the pumps and cylinders before the load is applied. This is critical in cold temperatures. When the engine is idled for long periods of time, make sure the idle speed is sufficient to keep the battery charges. Keep the crane engine at or near maximum governed speed during normal operations, especially when lifting a load. This provides maximum fuel economy, efficiency, safety, and power. Before shutting down a heavily worked engine, let it run without any load at part throttle for a few minutes to allow for cooling. When operating near excavations or buildings, make sure exhaust gases or fumes will not accumulate, causing an unhealthful condition. Of course, crane operators must know the location and use of all emergency shutdown switches and procedures. When operating the boom, never use more boom than necessary to get the job done. Always use the shortest boom possible. Electrical lines are always a hazard when working with cranes. Crane operators must constantly be aware of the location of all utility lines, pipelines, sewers, and underground obstructions, and always avoid these areas as much as possible. If necessary, physically mark these locations to prevent estimations or guesses. There are different distances crane operators must stay from power lines depending on your local, regional, or state laws. Be sure to know and follow these guidelines when operating any type of cranes. Generally, you must remain 10 feet from any line voltages up to 125,000 volts. From 125,001 to 250,000 volts, you must remain at least 15 feet away. Over 250,000 volts, you can get no closer to the power line than 25 feet. It's also recommended that another person on the ground serve as an observer to warn the crane operator when these limits may be exceeded. In the unlikely event that you do touch a power line that is energized, stay on the machine and try not to panic. Keep everyone away. If you can, move the crane off the wire. If you have to get off the machine while the crane is still touching the wire, don't step down. Jump off the machine. Jump off the machine and try to land as far away from the machine as possible without falling down. Keep your feet close together. The reason for jumping and keeping your feet together is to reduce electrical shock exposure in the event the ground surface is energized. If your feet are apart, the electrical potential between one foot to the other foot could cause electricity to flow through your body. After you've landed upright, continue to jump with your feet close together until you're far enough away from any potential electrical energy in the ground. Jumping with your feet close together is the safest method of avoiding a serious electrical shock under these circumstances. Always position the crane as close to the load as possible and in such a manner as to minimize the swing. Be sure there is adequate clearance for tail swing, especially if there are other people or vehicles nearby, and make sure the swing lock is disengaged before starting to operate the crane. On cranes equipped with outriggers, always use the outriggers, no matter the size or weight of the load to be lifted. The revolving portion of the superstructure of the crane must be dead level before making any lift. When determining the actual load, it's important to count the weight of all rigging equipment as part of the load. Never rely upon an estimate to figure the load weight. Use your load chart. Just because a crane is stable 1 minute doesn't mean that it will remain stable. There are many factors used in computing safe load limits, so always refer to the load chart and don't take chances. The hydraulic crane operator who waits for signs of tipping to warn of an overload condition will often bend the boom, exceed the pressure limits, or cause severe damage to the machine before any signs of tipping occur. Jerking loads or fast lifting or lowering can also cause machine damage and tipping. Crane capacities are quite complex and are based upon many factors such as the boom length, boom angle, and angle between the boom and pendants, as well as the actual weight of the load. Don't take chances. Don't forget the rigging equipment. They too have rated capacities based upon sling angles, strength of the rigging, weight of the load, and capacity of the tackle. All slings must be properly identified and must be protected from sharp corners or other hazards. Don't make lifts when loose equipment is not properly secured, and secure the unused portion of the sling legs. Never wrap a rope around a hook. Operators on the ground assisting with the lift must stand completely out of the way when the lift is started. Quite often, the load will shift when it is lifted off the ground. Naturally, never allow anyone to ride the load, and keep everyone from underneath a load that's raised. It's also important to keep the area around the crane completely clear of personnel. Know the weight of all loads before attempting to lift anything. Use your load indicator if you're not sure. When operating a truck crane, be sure the carrier transmission is placed in neutral. The rocking or tilting motion of the crane can be transmitted to the locked transmission, causing serious damage. There are many more operating rules, safety precautions, and additional information you need to know as a crane operator, but we can't list them all in this short program. The program has been presented to you to make you more aware of your responsibilities and to take safety very seriously. Crane accidents can occur quite easily, but they can also be prevented by trained, alert, and safety-conscious crane operators. If you take your job seriously, follow your company and crane manufacturer's recommendations, safety will be with you on the job. Taking shortcuts, not following the rules, and operating in an unsafe manner can create the environment for a serious injury. Operating a crane is a serious business. So is the safety of you, your family, and all the other employees on the job. Thank you. For your job, there are some basic safe work practices that must be observed by everyone working on the job site. The objective of a safety program is to prevent injuries and to allow you to do your job efficiently and safely. It takes an effort on your part to support the safety program, but after all, that's what it's all about. Right now, let's review some basic safe work practices. All persons must follow these safe practices and render every possible aid to safe operations and be a part of the program by reporting all unsafe conditions or practices to your supervisor or superintendent. The vast majority of work-related injuries are the result of unsafe acts of workers. That means when you take shortcuts, violate safety regulations, or simply don't take safety seriously, injuries are more likely to occur. Your company has a responsibility and obligation to make sure that all employees observe and obey all applicable company, state, or federal regulation and order as is necessary to the safe conduct of the work, and must take such action as necessary to obtain compliance. If you violate company safety rules or you work in an unsafe manner, you will be provided a written safety counseling. This counseling will explain what the unsafe behavior was and how to correct it. If it's a minor violation, then the counseling will serve as a reminder for the proper procedures. If it's a serious violation, or you continue to exhibit unsafe behavior, disciplinary action may be warranted. The purpose of safety rule enforcement is the protection of all employees. One employee's unsafe behavior could affect the safety of other employees, and safety is too important to allow unsafe behavior or unsafe conditions. In the construction industry, frequent accident prevention instructions or training is provided at least every 10 days. However, it is each employee's responsibility to work and act safely every day on every job. Training is simply making you more aware of safety and safety rules, but it's your job to work, think, and act safely every day. Anyone known to be under the influence of drugs or intoxicating substances which impair the employee's ability to safely perform the assigned duties shall not be allowed on the job while in that condition. If you are taking medication prescribed by a physician or taking over-the-counter medication, be sure to tell your supervisor before you begin work. Some medication may impair your ability to work or operate equipment safely. We discussed unsafe behavior and how it leads to injuries on the job. Unsafe behavior includes horseplay, scuffling, practical jokes, and other acts which tend to have an adverse influence on the safety or well-being of other employees. No one shall knowingly be permitted or required to work while the employee's ability or alertness is so impaired by fatigue, illness, or other causes that they might unnecessarily expose the employee or others to injury. Work shall be planned and supervised to prevent injuries in the handling of materials and in working together with equipment. Employees shall not enter manholes, underground vaults, chambers, tanks, silos, or other similar places that receive little ventilation unless it has been determined that it is safe to enter. Confined spaces can be quite hazardous, since toxic fumes, gases, and other hazards can gather in the spaces, creating a dangerous hazard. Machine guards and other protective devices must be in their proper place before machinery and equipment is used, and employees must report any deficiencies or hazards to the supervisor when they are detected. If the equipment is unsafe to operate, do not operate the equipment until it has been replaced or repaired. Crowding or pushing when boarding or leaving any vehicle or other conveyance is prohibited. Employees must not handle or tamper with any electrical equipment, machinery, or air or water lines in a manner not within the scope of their duties unless they have received instructions and authorization from their supervisor. If you are injured on the job, report the injury immediately. Don't wait. Report the injury when it occurs, even if you believe that medical treatment is not necessary. If medical treatment is required, it will be provided. When lifting anything, use the power of your legs and not your back. If you keep your back in its natural curvature by bending your legs, it's difficult to suffer a back injury. Inappropriate footwear or shoes with thin or badly worn soles must not be worn. Wear proper footwear and clothing on the job. Materials, tools, and other objects shall not be thrown from buildings or structures until proper precautions are taken to protect others from the falling objects. Housekeeping is important to everyone's safety, so take time to keep your work area clean. If you see a hazard, correct it. If you can't correct the hazard yourself, report it so it can be corrected. When handling chemicals or hazardous substances, be sure to use personal protective equipment as necessary and follow the instructions provided on the chemical label. Never use gasoline for any type of cleaning purposes. Wash your hands and skin after handling chemicals and hazardous materials. When using ladders, inspect the ladder before using it to make sure it is in good condition and will carry the load. Using the proper ladder for the job is equally important. Never stand on the top 2 steps of a ladder, and when using straight ladders, make sure the ladder extends at least 3 feet above the landing or where the ladder is positioned on the structure. Any damage to scaffolds, false work, or other supporting structures shall be immediately reported to your supervisor and repaired before use. No burning, welding, or other source of ignition shall be applied to any enclosed tank or vessel, even if there are some openings, until it has been first determined that no possibility of explosion exists, and authority for the work is obtained from your supervisor. Persons using welding equipment must always be concerned of starting fires from the sparks or slag. Never weld around combustible or flammable material, and if necessary, have someone standing by with a fire extinguisher during welding operations. When using tools and equipment, maintain these tools and equipment in good, serviceable condition. Damaged tools or equipment must be removed from service and tagged defective. Pipe or Stilson wrenches must not be used as a substitute for other wrenches. Only appropriate tools shall be used for a specific job. Wrenches must not be altered by the addition of a handle extension or cheater bars. Files must be equipped with handles and not used to punch or pry. A screwdriver should not be used as a chisel. Portable electric tools shall not be lifted or lowered by means of the power cord. Use ropes, not the power cord, for lifting or lowering electrical tools. Before electrical tools are used, they must be inspected to make sure the power cord and plugs are in good condition. Cords with cuts or frays must be replaced. You cannot simply wrap electrical tape over a cut or frayed cord. Only those persons who are trained and authorized may operate machinery or equipment. Loose or frayed clothing, long hair, dangling ties, finger rings, necklaces, and other potentially hazardous items may not be worn around moving machinery or other areas where they may become entangled. Machinery shall not be serviced, repaired, or adjusted while in operation, or shall oiling of moving parts be attempted, except on equipment that is designed or fitted with safeguards to protect the person performing the work. Where appropriate, lockout, tagout procedures must be used.
If you see a piece of equipment or a machine that is locked out and tagged out, do not attempt to operate this equipment. A lock and tag means that someone is working on that machine and could possibly be injured if the equipment were to be inadvertently started. Employees shall not work under vehicles or other equipment supported by jacks or chain hoists without protective blocking that will prevent injury if jacks or hoists should fail. Air hoses shall not be disconnected at compressors until the hose line has been bled and is free of any air pressure. All excavations must be visually inspected before backfilling to ensure that it is safe to backfill. Excavating equipment must not be operated near tops of cuts, banks, or cliffs if employees are working below. Tractors, bulldozers, scrapers, and carryalls must not operate where there is a possibility of overturning in dangerous areas like edges of deep fills, cut banks, and steep slopes. Watch out for moving vehicles and equipment on the job site. Often this equipment is noisy and the operator may not be able to hear or see you. You have the responsibility to watch out for moving equipment. There are many more safe practices and rules that could be listed, but it's impossible to list them all. Actually, safety is simply using common sense and good judgment. If something appears to have the potential for injury, then that's the time to take steps to make sure the injury doesn't occur. Teamwork, everyone's cooperation, and a special effort can result in a safe and healthful work environment. If you take safety seriously, you'll have a much better attitude about yourself and your job. Take time for safety, because safety really does make a difference. Thank you.
There's a lot of discussion today about accidents and injuries. Why do they happen? What causes accidents and injuries? The answer can be found in statistics. The insurance industry, governmental agencies, and the National Safety Council have analyzed employee accident investigations over the years and have determined that the overwhelming cause of most industrial accidents and injuries can be attributed to the unsafe acts of employees. That's a rather bold statement, putting the blame on employees. There are hundreds, even thousands of accident causes that couldn't possibly be the employee's fault. Broken machinery, unsafe conditions, and so on. What's the deal here? Well, there is no deal, only cold, hard facts. Let's take a look at some information that will enable you to better understand unsafe acts and how they contribute to accidents and injuries. First, let's explain the phrase contribute to an accident. Let's say an employee is using a machine that's unsafe. Perhaps the machine isn't working properly, but the employee continues to operate the equipment, neglecting to notify the supervisor that the machine is not working properly. The employee is injured. What was the cause? Well, of course, one of the contributing factors to the cause of the accident was the improperly working machine. It should have been corrected. The second contributing cause of the injury was the employee's failure to notify the supervisor so the machine could be repaired. We call this a dual cause of the accident. Two things caused this accident. How about the employee who lifts incorrectly and injures his back? If you use the safe lifting technique, back injuries won't usually occur. The same principle applies when a person tries to lift too heavy a load. It's too much trouble to ask for assistance, so you go ahead and try to lift a heavier load than you should. This, too, is an unsafe act. One of the most widely used tools in industry today is the box cutter. We prefer to call it a finger cutter, because that's usually what it does when the tool is used incorrectly. It doesn't make any difference what type of finger cutter tool you use. You must always keep your free hand out of the cutting path, just in case the cutter slips off the box you're cutting. If your free hand is out of the cutting path, you can't possibly cut yourself. Of course, you have to keep your other body parts out of the cutting path as well. Is cutting your hand with a finger cutter an unsafe act? The answer is absolutely, positively yes, without any doubt whatsoever. Personal protective equipment, such as gloves, safety glasses, and other protection, won't do you any good unless you wear it. If you get an eye injury because you weren't wearing safety glasses, is it an unsafe act? Absolutely, positively, without any doubt whatsoever. Forklifts are used in a variety of industries and in a variety of ways, from moving food products to metal casting to moving almost anything. 99% of all forklift accidents are caused by employee actions. Rarely does a mechanical defect cause an accident, particularly a forklift accident. What causes forklift accidents? Speeding on forklifts is one major cause. Forklifts are designed to be driven at a slow speed. The truck is very heavy and has a very high center of gravity. You can't turn or stop quickly if you're speeding on a forklift. Not paying attention also causes accidents. Scraping storage racks, running into walls, doors, or sprinkler pipes. These and many more accidents are caused by the unsafe acts of employees. Unsafe acts can mean many things, such as taking a shortcut, not following company safety rules, disregarding established procedures, or just not thinking about the job you're performing. The word negligence often creeps into the unsafe act arena. How about running at work? Could this possibly be considered an unsafe act? Well, if the building is on fire and you're running for your life, probably not. However, if you're running to do something and you fall down or you knock someone else down, absolutely, positively, without any doubt whatsoever. Okay, you've gotten a fairly good idea about unsafe acts. Is it really an employee's fault every time an accident occurs? Based upon statistics, 85 to 98% of all accidents are caused in whole or in part by the unsafe acts of employees. The second thing we want to discuss is the word fault. When an accident investigation is conducted, fault or blame is not used. Accident investigation is merely fact-finding to determine the cause of the accident. When a cause is determined, corrective action can be taken. If the employee's unsafe act caused the accident, then corrective action can be taken, such as explaining the cause and what action should be taken by the employee in the future to prevent a similar incident. If it were a dual cause and a machine needed to be repaired, then this corrective action would also be taken. One of the most important aspects of accident prevention is just that, to prevent accidents before they occur. The information gained during an accident investigation helps prevent future incidents by determining the cause and making corrections. The next question you're going to ask is, why do I get written up when I cause an accident? Well, the answer is quite simple. In today's work environment, with laws, OSHA, and sound business principles, written documentation is a necessity. Don't look at it as being written up. Look at it as training. There have been thousands and thousands of injuries directly caused by the unsafe acts of employees. And there's been no follow-up, no counseling, training, or documentation on these injuries. The injured employees were shortchanged. Shortchanged because they never did learn what they did wrong, so they probably kept on doing the same thing because their supervisor didn't explain what corrective action was necessary. Any employee who contributes to an accident or injury should be given a safety counseling. This counseling should be written on a counseling form explaining exactly what unsafe act contributed to the accident and what corrective action is expected of the employee. And the employee should be given time in which to correct the unsafe act or behavior. It's not disciplinary action, but training and understanding. Should an employee continue unsafe acts or unsafe behavior, disciplinary action may be warranted because the company is responsible for all employees and cannot tolerate those persons who refuse to work and act safely. It's really simple. If you take safety seriously, follow safety rules, and work and act safely, you won't have to worry about accidents and injuries. If you see another employee working unsafely, remind them of the safe way to perform the job. Teamwork is the key. You have safety rules, job procedures, and certainly you can use your good judgment to perform your job in a safe, efficient manner. Safety isn't complicated, but it does require an effort on everyone's part. For safety to become second nature, you have to practice safety all the time. When you pick up a box cutter, think finger cutter. By associating the hazard to the job, you automatically think about safety and how you're going to perform the task at hand safely. When you operate your automobile, automatically put your seatbelt on, even if it's driving through the parking lot. If you do this every time you get in your car, it becomes automatic. When you lift something, think about those delicate discs in your back and keep your back in its normal curvature. If the object's too heavy, get some help. When you operate a piece of machinery, think about the potential hazards and how you can perform the job without an injury. Operating a forklift? Think safety. Working with chemicals? Think safety. There isn't any job that can't be performed safely. All you have to do is work and act safely, and you'll be an accident-free employee. Most of all, realize that most accidents are caused by unsafe acts or unsafe behavior of employees. Then, do your part by not engaging in this type of activity. Safety doesn't get any easier. Thank you.
As we look back on injury experiences, one frightening thought comes clearly in focus. Hand and power tools cause thousands of injuries every year. Everyone uses hand and power tools, at work and at home, but even the simple screwdriver causes over 100 deaths each year. It's difficult to get excited about hand and power tools, but the injury rate tells us safety is extremely important when using this equipment. This program can't possibly cover all hand and power tools and all the safety rules associated with using these items, but the point we want to stress right up front is safety must be exercised every time anyone uses hand and power tools. Safety awareness is of vital importance. So let's begin the program with some basics. A good safety attitude is the first step in injury prevention. If you're aware of the potential hazards, then do something about these hazards to protect yourself and others. Then you have a good safety attitude. Safety behavior is a term used quite frequently, but all it means is a person exercises good judgment, follows safety rules, and doesn't take shortcuts to get the job done. Safety behavior reflects your safety attitude, and it certainly doesn't take any more time, effort, or anything else on your part to be a truly safe employee. It does require you to use good judgment and follow the safety rules established by your organization. Okay, the first rule for hand and power tool safety is to use equipment that is in good, safe, serviceable condition. Regardless of who provides the tools and equipment, either you or your employer, all tools and equipment must be in good, serviceable condition. Defective equipment must be taken out of service and not used until it is repaired or replaced. Okay, let's take a few seconds to talk about knuckle skinners, also known as wrenches. Most wrench accidents are caused by the wrench slipping off the bolt or nut you're trying to turn. Knuckles and fingers bang into surfaces, causing minor injuries. When you're turning something with a wrench, be prepared for the wrench to slip. so the injury can be prevented. If you're prepared, you'll prevent the injury. When using long-handled wrenches, position your feet and body in such a manner so that if the wrench slips, you won't take a fall. Another safety tip is to make sure the wrench opening fits snugly on the nut or bolt. A loose fit damages the tool, and it certainly increases the injury potential. Never try to use metric wrenches on inch fasteners or vice versa. Use the proper tool for the job. One of the worst safety violations is to use a cheater bar. A cheater bar is something like a pipe placed on the wrench or tool to give you more leverage. Your wrench or tool is designed only for hand pressure, and when you add a cheater bar, you're exceeding the safety design of the tool. Just say no to cheater bars. Certainly, there are times when you need to loosen a frozen nut or bolt, and hand pressure won't do it. That's when you need to use a heavy-duty striking tool and some penetrating oil. The striking tool is designed to be hit with a hammer and will do the job, so you don't have to use a cheater bar or other hazardous operation to free that frozen bolt or nut. There are basically three types of socket wrenches and sockets: hand sockets, power sockets, and impact sockets. Never mix the different types. In other words, don't use a hand socket on an impact wrench. Each type is designed for a specific wrench, and when you use the wrong socket, you can easily damage the wrench or socket. If you're using an impact wrench, use only impact sockets designed for the job. Adjustable wrenches are very versatile, and they're used for a variety of jobs. One of the major causes of injuries with adjustable wrenches is using damaged wrenches. When the adjustable threads become worn, or the surface on the inside of the jaw becomes rounded from use, the tool is unsafe to use. Replace this damaged tool with one in serviceable condition. It may seem like a simple solution, and it is, but adjustable wrenches that are worn out should be replaced. The same basic rule applies to bench vices. When the jaws of the vise become worn, it's time to replace the jaws. You don't have to replace the whole vise, just the worn jaws. Another tip for bench vices is to make sure they are securely fastened to the work table or bench. Power tools and equipment require special attention because when an injury does occur, it's usually very serious. Not much room for error on powered equipment. Before you use any power tool, inspect it to make sure it's in good condition and has no defects or safety hazards. If your power equipment uses cutting blades, bits, or other such attachments, make sure they are sharp and in good condition. Dull blades and bits can cause damage to the material you're cutting and can also contribute to personal injury. Be sure all your equipment is in proper working order. Electrical tools have at least one safety device to protect the user from electrical shock. This safety device is called grounding, and in some cases, double insulation. Let's review grounding because this is the most common protection on electrical tools and appliances. Grounding means there is a third wire in the tool running through the third prong in the plug. There is a grounding wire or connection from the electrical power source or receptacle that goes to earth or ground. In the event of an electrical short or other malfunction of the tool, electricity will flow through this ground to earth and not through your body. If the ground prong is broken off, or the ground wire is broken, or there is a gap in the electrical ground, the electricity will have nowhere to go except through the person holding the tool. This tells you that it's very important to inspect your electrical equipment for defects before you use the equipment. Some tools afford you shock protection by double insulating the inside of the tool. In the event of a short or other malfunction, the operator is protected by this double insulation. You may notice some electrical tools that only have two prongs on the electrical plug. The first thing you should do is check the manufacturer's data plate for the words double insulated. If you see an electrical tool with only two prongs and the tool does not state it is double insulated, then do not use this particular tool until it's replaced or repaired for the proper ground. Regardless of the type of shock protection on your electrical tool, it won't help if you're using the equipment near water, liquids, or other unsafe conditions. Sweaty palms or perspiration when using electrical tools is also unsafe, as a wet or moist environment is extremely hazardous around electricity. Another good tip is never carry any equipment by the electrical cord. Yanking cords out of the wall receptacle by the cord is also unsafe. Remove the plug from the wall receptacle by holding the plug, not the cord. When using any type of electrical equipment, always inspect the plugs, cords, cables, and attaching hardware for frays, cracks, cuts, or damage. Electricity is nothing to fool with, so don't take chances with your equipment. If it's not safe to use, don't use it. You've all seen or probably used octopus receptacles and plugs to increase the electrical outlets. When you do this, you're exceeding the design of the wall receptacle, and if you use too much current or amps, you can trip circuit breakers and, even worse, overload the circuit and quite possibly cause a fire. Don't use octopus plugs. Another safety factor around electricity is using three-prong adapters, such as the one shown here. It has 3 prongs for you to insert your grounded plug, but it only has 2 prongs for the receptacle. The idea is to use this grounding wire and connect it to the wall receptacle, which is supposedly designed to ground the system. These types of plugs are unsafe and should never be used in any industrial environment. In fact, they should never be used in your home either. Okay, let's quickly review some more basic safety tips. The first tip is relating to power drills. All drill bits must be sharp in order to drill safely. Dull bits can damage the material or can break and cause a serious injury. Be sure drill bits are sharp and in good condition. When you're drilling, don't use excessive force. If you need a larger drill or some other type of equipment to do the job, that's okay. But don't try to bully a drill bit into material by using excessive force. When you're tightening a drill bit into the chuck, be sure it's properly tightened, and never tighten the drill bit with anything other than the proper chuck. If you use screwdrivers or other makeshift chucks, you're asking for trouble. When using portable hand saws, always make sure the guard is in place and working properly. Never remove the guard or tie it back. Mechanical guards are designed for your protection, and it's really unsafe to render any guard inoperable. There is always a safe way to use your equipment. Taking chances, such as using your leg as a workbench, is an accident waiting to happen. It doesn't make sense. Everyone wants to complete their job as quickly as possible, but think about the time off from work that results from an injury. The 10 seconds you save becomes 10 or more hours of lost time. When you're working with hand and power tools, your safety attitude and common sense are the 2 most important parts of your job. Your organization can have the most effective safety rules and the best equipment, but if you neglect the attitude part, you're heading for trouble. Recognize the potential hazards of the job, such as sharp edges, falling objects, extreme heat or cold, chemicals, flammables, and electricity. Think through each task before you do it, and know what you're asking of your hands and body. Follow the safety rules, even if you've gotten away with shortcuts before. In the event of an injury, even a minor injury, report it to your supervisor when it occurs, so medical attention can be provided if it's needed. Use personal protective equipment when it's provided and necessary, and think about safety on every job you perform. Hand and power tools are very safe to use if you follow the rules. Follow your organization's safety policies and procedures, and you'll find that your job is easier, quicker, and you'll be a safer employee. It's that simple. Thank you.
every industry and many homes use ladders. Each year, thousands of people are injured by falling off ladders. So right now, let's begin a review of the safe way to use ladders. It's more than just climbing on a ladder and exercising caution. It begins when you first select your ladder. In offices, small step stools are used to reach high places, but these are not considered ladders. They are step stools, and they can be dangerous also. On step stools, be sure they are in good condition and do not have slippery surfaces. Never stand on a chair or other makeshift step stool. Always use the proper device for the job. The next category, and one that causes the most injuries, are step ladders. One simple mistake can cause a serious injury. The very first safety rule when using check the steps to make sure they are not slippery. Quite often, grease, oil, solvents, and other materials can be left on the rungs or sides of the ladder and can cause you to slip and fall. Inspect the ladder. All wood parts should be free from sharp edges and splinters. Wooden parts must be physically sound and free from compression failures, decay, or other irregularities. Low-density wood should not be used on wooden step ladders. The metal spreader or locking device of sufficient size and strength to securely hold the front and back section in open positions shall be a component of each step ladder. The spreader shall have all sharp points covered or removed to protect the user. Basically what we're saying is the ladder must be in good condition and maintained in that condition, or it cannot be used. Naturally, good footing is important when placing ladders. Never place ladders on boxes, barrels, or other unstable bases to obtain additional height. Make sure the ladder is tall enough to do the job because you can't step on the top two steps of any step ladder. Basically, step ladders are designed to be used at the center of gravity, and if you stand on the top two steps of any step ladder, your weight is past the center of gravity and can easily tip over the step ladder. Another good rule to remember is the belt buckle rule, and this also reflects upon the ladder's center of gravity. You should keep the center of your body within the inside rails of the ladder. If you lean out past the side rails, the center of gravity of your body and the step ladder can cause the ladder to fall to one side. That's why it's called the belt buckle rule. If you must use materials or tools, hoist them up with a rope or other device. You need both hands when climbing up or down a ladder. Of course, when using step ladders, don't place them near doors because an opening door could create an accident. While we're on the subject of step ladders, let's talk about metal step ladders. All the same rules apply to metal ladders as with wooden ladders. However, let's add one more rule. Never use a metal or aluminum ladder when working with electricity. That means even when you're changing a light bulb. The metal or aluminum ladder could easily contact an energized electrical wire and serve as an excellent conductor of electricity, and you can imagine the result. Don't use metal or aluminum ladders near electricity. When using straight ladders, there are several important safety tips to consider. All ladders must be inspected before use. They must be free of dirt, grease, or slippery materials. When placing a straight ladder on a working surface, use the 4-to-1 rule. For every 4 feet of length of the ladder, it should be placed 1 foot from the vertical surface on which you rest the ladder. What this means is that when setting up a straight ladder at the proper angle, you place the base a distance from the vertical wall equal to 1/4 the working length of the ladder. As you can see, a 12-foot ladder would be placed 3 feet from the vertical wall. This provides rigid support and keeps the ladder within its designed center of gravity. Never use any ladder in a horizontal position as runway or as scaffolds. Okay, the next rule on straight ladders is when you're gaining access to a roof or landing. Make sure the ladder extends past any landing or roof at least 3 feet. This provides you with hand support when getting on or off the roof. It is highly recommended that ladders be tied off in some manner to prevent it from slipping from side to side. There are many other types of ladders and climbing devices, such as rolling scaffolds, stationary scaffolds, but the greatest number of injuries come from everyday step ladders and straight ladders used in industry and in the home. In many retail organizations, they use platform-type ladders with rolling wheels. When a person's weight is applied to the platform, the ladder pushes down and is stabilized by metal feet. Inspecting the wheels and the device that stabilizes the ladder would be an important consideration in the safety of platform ladders. Making sure the ladder's steps were completely clean and free of grease or other slippery surfaces is another important part of ladder safety for platform ladders. Using the handrails when walking up or down the ladder. On platform ladders, some organizations allow the carrying of material or merchandise on platform ladders, but the sensible thing to do is not carry anything that is awkward or too heavy. Overextending the ladder is going past the center of gravity. Standing on the rails to get extra height is unsafe. Regardless of the type of ladder you use, there is a safe method of using the ladder. Be sure you know and understand the rules, then use your good judgment in following these rules. There's nothing secret about safety, nothing exotic or mysterious, just plain common sense. Safety rules and procedures are nothing more than experience. When you use a step stool, step ladder, straight ladder, platform ladder, scaffold, or any type of equipment, think about the potential hazard. Then use your good judgment to reduce your risk. Take the time for safety because you're worth it. There isn't any job you can't perform safely if you just follow the rules. If it can't be done safely, you shouldn't do it.